So welcome to another guide on this channel, and this one we need to talk about the K2 from Behringer, and this is like the MS20 take on Behringer, on that take, the MS20 from KORG. So this is not a review, this is a complete guide, and we are going to be covering everything that this synthesizer can do. So we're going to go section by section, learning what this can do, and this can do a lot. The filters, the oscillators, then the envelope and the LFOs, and how can, we can control the whole synth. So I'm going to be dividing this guide in two parts. The main part, which is this one, the first one, is going to be talking about this section of the synthesizer, not the patch bay. The second video is going to be just about the patch bay, and we are going to be covering in detail what we can do with this, what each out and in on the patch bay means. So if you feel a little bit confused about the layout of the synth, and when you look at the patch bay you get really confused, it's not you, it is confusing. The layout, it's just a little bit confusing. And if you think about this, this was released originally, the MS20, on the 70s, on the 78, I guess. So yeah, a long time ago. But still, once you learn what this can do, all the different parts, it's a very easy read. Now notice that this guide is divided into different sections. At the bottom you're going to find a timeline, and if you go to the description you are going to see the categories right there, the different sections of this video. So if you already know how some parts work, you just can go and skip that section and jump to the one you care. So if you take a look at right here, it's going to tell you how everything gets connected behind the scenes on this synthesizer, how it's pre-wired, without using the patch bay. And it's going to tell you we have the oscillator number 1 and 2, then it goes to a mixer stage, which is going to be that one, and then it's going to go through a high pass filter, then it goes to a low pass filter, and then it comes out it goes to the voltage control amplifier, to the BCA, and it's going to be this section right here. So you get right here at the top of the waveforms that you can do, and you can do the most common waveforms. You get a triangle, you get a saw, and then you get a pulse, and then you get just noise, of course. Now for now I'm going to go back and just put it on the pulse. Now of course what you can do, if you go right here at the bottom, you can control the range. So this is going to go to 32, 16, 8, and then 4. So 32, 8, 16, 8, and 4, right? For now I'm just going to leave it on 16, something low that it's easy to hear. So then if we stay on the pulse, we have this control. And this is going to be controlling the pulse width. Now this is something that you can only use with the pulse. You cannot use it with a triangle, or you cannot use it with a saw. It will only work with the pulse. Now this control has two main uses, just two main uses. The first one is going to be changing the pulse width. If I go and maybe play something higher, notice that the pulse width will change. And if you go too much, it's going to be too thin. You're going to be not able to hear anything because it's just too thin. And if I go, it's just going to make it wider until we go to the normal pulse. So the other use for this one is going to be when we use a ring on the oscillator number 2, but we're going to talk about that in a minute. But in conclusion, that's it. That's what you can do with the oscillator number 1. For now, I'm going to leave it on a saw, and I'm going to go all the way down on the VCO number 1, and I'm going to go all the way up on the VCO number 2. So the 1 and the 2 are just a little bit different. Now the number 2 can do a saw, just like the 1, that part is not different. It can do a pulse, again, just not different. But then we cannot control the pulse width of this one, of the number 2. We can only do it with the number 1. But if you go to the next waveform, it's going to be a narrow width. So it's like staying on this one and then going right here, and we are going to get pretty much the same thing. So let me go back to saw on the number 1. But yeah, you can just get a saw, you get a pulse, and a narrow pulse. And then you have the ring. We're going to talk about the ring in a minute. So then what you can do, and this is something that you cannot do with the first one, is change the pitch of this one. So maybe if you're playing the first one, let's go both saws, you just can offset the pitch, and we are offsetting the pitch of the second one, not the first one. So we can, make thirds or fifth. Let me adjust the volumes. Right, so you can just change the pitch. Now, if you kind of sit them right there together, and you can just kind of tap this, and you're going to be offsetting both oscillators, and you're going to get this kind of a bigger sound. Right, so that's something that you need to know. And the controls, in this case, the pitch is a very sensitive, kind of control. As soon as you move it just a little bit, you're going to be kind of offsetting too much. And we can hear that it's just a little bit detuned. So just like the number one, you get the scale control, but right here again, notice it's a little bit different. On this one, we can go lower to 32s, and on this one, we can't. We just can go to 16, we can go to 8, and for now, let me just turn off the first oscillator. You can go to 16, 8, 4, and you can go higher. This one cannot go to 2. And that's, kind of one of the main differences. So the biggest difference of the number 2 is going to be the ring. So you can do a ring modulation. And notice that right now I'm all the way on the number 2 and all the way down on the number 1. Now this is kind of a ring modulation-ish, and it kind of works in a different way from different synthesizers. And in this case, I'm just going to be playing the oscillator number 2. And if I go to ring and everything is kind of we are going to be, let me just put it on 16 for now. Notice it sounds a little weird. But we get something. Now, right here, this one, what it will do, to create ring modulation, you kind of need a second oscillator to do the kind of the heavy lifting. And in this case, it's going to be the pulse of the oscillator number 1. And remember I told you a minute ago that this control works for the ring and the pulse width of this one. And it's because the ring works with the pulse of the oscillator number 1. Now, if I go all the way down and all the way up, we are on pulse. Notice that the ring does nothing. If I change right here, the oscillator number 1 will not change. But if I go to the number 2 and I go to the pulse and I start moving this, notice it will start to change. So yeah. Now if I go all the way up, we get pretty much nothing. I'm just hearing the second oscillator doing nothing. Because the pulse of this one that it's being used to do the ring modulation, it's super, super slim. So we get nothing. And as soon as I make it bigger, we are going to be getting some sound. And we get a really... We get a really gritty sound. So it doesn't matter if you combine the other oscillator. I'm going to be maybe doing something like that. Right? And I'm doing a little bit of the saw of the oscillator number 1 and the ring of the oscillator number 2. So going to different waveforms right here, it will not change because this one is kind of doing the ring behind the scenes. So if I go right down there at the bottom, I still, get a saw. And this control, the ring one, will still work with the modulation. So you can make a combination of both. And you're going to be getting different sounds. Right, so pretty simple. So there are kind of different ways of doing ring modulation. This one is kind of an XOR type of ring modulation. Some other synths do a different thing to get the sound. In this case, this one does a XOR, and it sounds like that. You get that gritty sound, kind of a very true from the MS20. And then last but not least, and for now, let me go to saw. We're gonna do a saw on both. Right? Okay, so then at the bottom right here, you get the portamento and you get the master tune. So the master tune is just that. It's going to be detuning both oscillators by some amount, and then we go down. So again, it's just a master detune. So if you play something and you use a pedal, or maybe a tuner right here, and it's just a little bit offsetted and it's just not true to what you have right here. I mean, with the second one or maybe the first one, you're going to need to adjust the master tune just to be in tune. So the second thing is going to be the portamento, and this one is again just a kind of a glide control. If I play something, and let me just for now go up, it's going to be a little bit easier to hear. If I go up and I play something else, this is just going to glide to the next key. When we play different keys, it's just going to slide to the next one. And as you go up on this one, of course, the effect is going to be a little bit, more obvious. And right now, I'm just playing a lower octave and then 2 octaves higher, the same key. We can't see the spectrum, how it's just kind of gliding or sliding to there. Yeah, so that's the portamento, pretty easy control, very standard on any kind of a synthesizer. So now we need to talk about the filters, and the filters in the case of this synthesizer is like the main soul of the synth. Not just this synth, the MS20 as well. It has a very, very distinct personality, and this comes mainly from the filters. Okay, so you get two sides. So remember how we talked about this? That the oscillators will go to the mixer, and then first it will go through the high-pass filter, and then it will go through the low-pass filter. We cannot, of course, change the order. It's going to go first to this one, and then it's going to feed to the low-pass. So we're going to start with this one. We get some sound, and at the bottom you can see the spectrum, so we can see how much we are cutting from the frequencies. So this one will cut the low frequencies. If I kind of play something, I'm going to be cutting, and we're going to be throwing low frequencies out. There you go. Now then at the bottom you get the peak control, and if this is a family show, so I'm just going to be explaining some things that are kind of obvious if you do have some experience. But again, this is a family show. I'm targeting all audiences, so I'm going to be explaining how this works. So the peak is going to be kind of a bump or rise on the breakpoint. So right here we are just kind of cutting frequencies. So this one has a breakpoint. How can we find the breakpoint? Well, it's going to be the peak. If I go and rise with the peak, notice that on the spectrum that we have a peak, so that's the peak. Now if I move this one, we are going to get that kind of a very particular sound. Right, so if we go all the way up, it's going to be a very resonant peak. Right, so that's what we can do with the high-pass filter. We just cut the low frequencies, and then you can add the peak. And then you have the other one. This one is going to feed through this one, which is going to be the low-pass filter. And this one we do the opposite. This one we cut low frequencies, and on this one we cut high frequencies. So if I go up, if I keep going down, we are going to be disposing high frequencies until it sounds very dark. And we are cutting pretty much everything. Now, just like this one, we have the peak control. And as we go up, we're going to be adding that peak. And at some point, it's going to get, very resonant. Right, so very simple. So, that's it. You can cut lows, you can cut highs, and then you get the peak control. Now, on this synthesizer, which is something that you don't get on the MS20, is that you can choose between two different filters, and they are just kind of a little bit different from each other. Right now, I'm using the number 2. I'm going to go and use the number 1. So the number 1 is just a little bit more kind of aggressive. Let's say it's a little bit more resonant. We're going to get close. We're going to get faster to that resonant point. If I go all the way up on the peak, and notice that they already sound different. And if I start going up, notice that we are at this point and we are getting that resonant peak. If I go to the other one, it's just going to sound a little bit different. Right. So the first one is just a little bit more resonant, aggressive, darker, but noisy. And if I go to the other one is just a bit more cleaner, a little bit more control. And let me just kind of put it right there, maybe right there. So the second one is a little bit more cleaner, more controlled, it's a little bit less dark. So if I go right here and I go to switch to the first one, notice how different they sound. So maybe on the first one we can just go right here and adjust the cut just to get closer to the other one, but still, they sound very different. So on the MS20 and this one of the cool things that you can do, and that's why you get the high pass and the low pass, is that you can do that peak on higher frequencies, but this doesn't stop you from cutting lows and adding a peak right there at the bottom, and then moving one of the other one, or maybe moving both at the same time. It's gonna give you different timbres. And here's how greedy it sounds. If I go to the other one, right, so again, this is like the main soul of the synthesizer. So going all the way up, all the way down, and down at the peak, we are just not doing anything. We're not using the filters. So the idea, I guess, is that the number 1 sounds a little bit closer to the MS20, and I mean the original one. And the number 2 sounds a little bit closer to the Mini, MS20 Mini, which is like the newer kind of MS20 that KORG released. So they still sound different from the KORG versions. They all sound a little bit different, but they are very, very close. I don't own the old one. I do own the Mini one. Maybe I'm gonna be covering soon, but it's just gonna be the same, pretty much the same. Now they are close. They sound very, very close. This catches that MS20 vibe. And I'm telling you this because there's a lot of discussion in, well, you know, they don't sound exactly the same and so on and so on. Just, you know, enjoy the synth. It's a good synth and it gets you really close to that MS20 vibe. So it's super close. Now, if you want the original sound, get an old MS20. You know, go and just find it used and just get it. Now, the thing is just finding one in a good shape. Remember, it was released on the 78. So finding one in a good shape for a reasonable price is just very, very hard. And I gotta be honest, I own the Mini and I love it. You know, I just love it. But the Mini has a lot of flaws. And if you go to the internet, to the web, and you try to find complaints about the MS20 Mini, you're gonna find a lot. In my case, I never had an issue. It feels at the moment, you know, the knobs, they felt a little bit cheap, but that's pretty much it. Never had an issue with the filters. A lot of people complained about the filters. They break easily and they get noisy filters. And that's, you know, pretty much the main flaw. And I'm telling you this, and I'm a KORG fan. I've got like 6 synthesizers from KORG and I love them all. But okay, you know, let's keep moving forward. This is not about my opinion. It's about learning the synth. So now we know how to use the oscillators, the mixer, and the, of course, the filters. And, you know, we're just kind of following the path right here. Oscillators, mixer. Now we know the filters. We need to move on to the VCA. Right, so the VCA, of course, is going to be when the sound goes out of the synth. So something, of course, needs to control how the sound goes out, and that is going to be the main envelope of the synthesizer, which is going to be EG2, Envelope Generator 2. This is like the main envelope. Now, a lot of the things that we have on the main panel, the pre-wiring, can change when we go to the patch bay, but the pre-wiring is that this one is like the final envelope that we need to use. So on this envelope, we get a classic ADSR. The sustain level works a little bit different from some other synthesizers, but still at the end of the day, it's just a classic ADSR. You get attack, decay, sustain, and release. You also get hold time. We're going to talk about this in a minute. It's just very particular. So this is going to be the last thing I'm going to show you. So remember, this is a family show. This guide is for anyone that wants to learn. So maybe you don't have a lot of experience working with synthesizers or synthesis, and you are a little bit confused in what ADSR is. So I'm going to be explaining how ADSR works right here. And then at the end of this section, I'm going to be explaining what the hold time will do. So if you already know how ADSR works, I'm not going to be teaching you anything new. So maybe you can skip that part and then watch, you know, the end of this section, which is going to be the whole time. Okay, so of course, the sound goes in, and behind the scenes, how it works, you know, the synthesizer, any kind of a synthesizer, is that the oscillators are always kind of constantly running. We don't hear them because there's something controlling how the sound goes out. And this is going to be the envelope. So the envelope is going to be controlling the volume when we press a key, how it's going to come out, and how we go to full silence, you know, how we hear, and how we start and how we end. So we have an attack, a decay, a sustain, and a release. So the attack and the decay are time-based controls. So they are just in milliseconds, or, you know, time-based. Now the sustain is going to be a level control. It's kind of a value. It's not based on time. So in this case, and the release, of course, is going to be a time control, just like the attack and decay. In this case, I'm going to go to the sustain. Notice all the knobs are all the way down. I'm going to go all the way down to sustain nothing. So all the knobs are in 0. So of course, since the sound starts right there, goes through here, if we have nothing in between that will, you know, control this, how the sound goes out, the sound will go out constantly and it will never stop, even if you're playing a key or we are not playing a key. So this one is going to stop it and it will decide how it will come out. How it will come out? Well, first we need to start with the attack time. So when I play a key, and now I'm going to go and play a key, maybe I'm just, I don't know, I'm going to do a C. So notice that we get nothing, and we get a tiny pluck. And we get this because everything is just super short. You know, we have 0 on everything. So the attack time is going to be how long will take for the sound to go up to the maximum level, which is going to be the volume that goes out. And if I go right here and introduce a little bit of attack, notice that the sound goes up in volume and then dies. So the attack time will decide how long it will take to go up to the full amplitude of the sound. If I go all the way maybe to 8, it's gonna take a long time to go there. And when it reaches the maximum time, it's just gonna die. But again, this one decides how smoothly we go up to maximum volume. And if I go all the way up on this one, it's gonna be super slow. It's taking a long time. And then at some point when we are done, it's gonna die, right? So, you know, this decides how smoothly or how long it will take from full silence to maximum volume. Then of course, at some point it's just kind of a dying. So how we go back to full silence is going to be the decay time. So if I press a key, maybe you're going to go and do a kind of a long time. We're about 7. I'm going to go and provide a little bit of decay, and I'm going to do the same right now. Both are on 7. We know that we could slowly go up. At some point, we need to go down. So now notice that it's just not dying very abruptly. It's just kind of going down very slowly. And this is the decay time. And they have different times. This one is faster. This one is a little bit slower. So if I go right here, it's going to slowly go up. And when it needs to go down to go to silence, it will fade out, just like, you know, with the instruction we provide on the decay, right? So now we know how to go up and how it will go down. And in this case, I'm still holding a key, right? So what's going to happen when I hold the key? So that's going to be the sustain level. It means that we are sustaining a note. So the sustain level will decide when to stop. So since this one goes all the way down to the bottom to full silence, the sustain level is going to say, okay, decay, I know that you want to go down, but I'm going to stop you right here. So if I do something like that, maybe let me just go a little bit faster. The sustain level as I go up is going to bring the sound up and up and up and up to full amplitude. Now the trick right here is that we need maybe to decide where we want to stay. So maybe we want to slow kind of a going up, then this one is going to go down in volume and we can stay at the lower volume. That's why the sustain is the level. If I keep going down, notice it's going down in volume. And as I go up, it's going to say I want to stay right here. So if I do slow times, something like that, and I leave it right here, a little bit of sustain, it will slowly go up, it will enter the decay stage, it will slowly go down until it meets the sustain. And it's just going to stay right there if we are holding a key. Right? So pretty simple. We go how slowly we go up, how slowly we go down, and where we want to stay at. If I go all the way down in the sustain, even though I'm holding a key, it's just going to die. And if I go up, it's just going to stay where we want. Now, you need to know that I'm still holding a key. If I go all the way up on the sustain level, what we are doing, we are kind of disabling the decay time. So it doesn't matter, we have some decay. If I play a key, it's going to go up slowly because we have a slow attack time, but it's never going down. It's just staying all the way at the top. Until, of course, we release the key. If I release the key, the sound dies. So maybe I don't want that, right? I want to play a key, I want to go up, and then when I release the key, I want it for slowly going down in volume. I don't want this sound to cut abruptly. So that's going to be release time. How long will it take when I release a key? That's why it's called released. So if we add a little bit of time and I play a key and I release it, instead of just dying right away, it's just going to slowly go down, right? And this is going to be how long it will take. And this could be really long. If I go there and release a key, it's going to take a long time to go to full silence. Right. Okay, so let me just put the controls maybe around something there, something like that. Just kind of doing this randomly. Right, so we get something like that, very simple. So then we have a hold time. So now we know that when we release a key, we will enter, after we are sustaining, if I play a key and we are holding that key, when I release it, this stage will end and it will jump to the release stage to go to full silence. We know that right now. So what the hold is going to do is going to kind of hold it at some point for a certain amount of time in the sustain stage. And then it will go to the release time. Right now, I go up, and when I release the key, it goes to the release time. But now, if we add a little bit of time right here, I play a key, it's gonna go up, it's gonna go down, it's gonna sustain, and I'm gonna release the key, and we should be going to release time. Not really. It's gonna spend some time stuck there, and when it's done, then it's gonna go to the release. So that's what the hold will do. So of course, if we go all the way down, and I'm gonna go higher, I'm gonna play a key, and the hold time could be really long. I'm gonna release the key right now, and it's stuck on the sustain, and it's gonna take a long time to go to release, and there it goes. So that's what the hold time does. Very simple control. So for now, I'm just gonna go all the way down on everything, and I'm gonna go to the sustain level all the way up. Now, this is like the main envelope of the synthesizer. Everything that goes out of the synthesizer is gonna go through this envelope. But this envelope has two main tasks. The first one is, of course, to control the volume that goes out of the synth. But the second task is going to be how we can modulate some of the controls we have right there. Right, so the first task we kind of covered, which is how the sound goes out, the main VCA envelope. So now we need to talk about how this one works with modulation. So we need to talk about the modulation section. But first, before we can start with that, I'm going to start with this one, with the modulation generator. Okay, so the modulation generator is a long term for LFO. It's just an LFO. That's what it is. So it's going to be right here. And we have two main controls. Now, this synthesizer, it's not like a, let's say, modern. And again, it's 78. It was released on the 78. It's a very limited in what it can do. And we get just a very, very simple LFO. Now, still, with all its limitations, we can get really crazy sounds. But with the main panel, like the default wiring is just a very simple LFO. You just can use one single waveform or maybe a waveform, and you just can use the frequency right here. You can decide how fast or how slow it will go, and this light will tell you how fast you're going or how slow you're going, right? Pretty simple, just a standard LFO. Now, of course, this control is a little bit weird because notice that you have right here the kind of the icons of what this is doing. So the pre-wiring, without doing any patching, this is going to be a triangle on this position. That's why you get the triangle. And if you go all the other way, right here, this is going to be a saw. Maybe if I move it, you're going to see the saw right there. Maybe not. So all the way to the left is going to be a saw. And if we go all the way to the other side, it is going to be a ramp. So of course, if we go to some places in between, it's going to be like a combination of, morphing like from a triangle to a ramp or a saw. But this is, what this control does. You can do a triangle, a saw, or you can do a ramp. But then on the outside part of this, you get a pulse. So it's a little bit confusing. And this is kind of true to the MS20. The panel is just a little bit confusing. So by default, you can do this 3. Now, by doing some patching, you can change the instruction of the LFO, the waveform, to whatever you have on the outside, which is going to be a pulse, and a pulse, but this one is a different type of narrow and a shorter pulse. So yeah, it's just a little bit weird. But by default, the only thing that you can do is a triangle. Now, we're not going to talk about patching, but maybe you want to turn this into a square, a pulse, and then the other pulses. How can you do it? So right here, you have your modulation generator. Notice that you get right here the saw, the triangle, and then the ramp up. And then if you go right there, you're going to see that you get this, icons that you get right here, the pulse. So what you can do, you can patch this one right there, and you're going to be patching or connecting to the pulse. And you're going to be going to total. in this case. And we're going to talk about this in a second. So when you go to total, you're saying, okay, so instead of using for everything, all the modulations, instead of using the triangle, saw, or ramp, I'm going to be using what's on the outside, the pulse, the shorter one, and the other one. Now, in this case, for now, I'm just going to disconnect it, but this is how you kind of enable that feature. Now, of course, right now, we're not doing anything. How can we use this? So you can use the LFO or the modulation generator, in a lot of different ways from the patch bay, but by default, the pre-wiring, it's right here. So you can modulate the frequency, you can modulate the cutoff, the cutoff of the high pass, or the cutoff of the low pass. Now, who's going to be controlling this is going to be the first row, these 3 attenuators. This one, and this one. So this one, notice that right here at the bottom, you get a label. And again, the labels are just a little bit confusing. So you get the MG, is the modulation generator. So this is the attenuator for this. This by default, it's listening to the LFO. But then it says dash and it says TXT, which is what we just did. We connected an external kind of an instruction, which is going to be, in this case, the pulse, to this one. And T is total. So it's external and total. So that's what it means. Now, of course, you can connect very different things, a lot of different things to the total to change the instruction. But we're going to talk about that on when we talk about the patch bay on the next video. So on this one, of course, you can modulate the pitch. Right here, the high pass and the low pass. So let's start with the pitch. And we are going by this speed. Maybe I'm gonna go to a higher key and I'm gonna go a little bit low in volume. Just gonna get them closer. When we go up on this one, we are saying, okay, I want to modulate the pitch of both oscillators by doing a triangle and going this rate, this speed. If we go up, we get that kind of a vibrato. And of course, you keep going up, it's gonna get a little bit more crazy. Now, of course, let me just go to something not so sickening. And this one, of course, is gonna be faster, or it's gonna be slower. We can go to a saw, and we can really hear how the saw works. And then we can go to a ramp. It's just gonna go and ramp. Right, so that's how it works. That's how it works. Now, of course, I'm going to go all the way down on this one. And in the case of the high pass, well, in this case, or the high pass and the low pass, both attenuators will control how we are going to be moving this control. So it's going to be easier to see maybe on this one first. I'm going to be cutting some high frequencies. Now, of course, I don't kind of know where the filter is. So if we add a little bit of peak, we can see the peak right there. And for now, I'm just gonna maybe keep on that one. Right. So if I move this, we can see how it's moving. So of course, this is gonna be this. So if I go up, we can see how it's moving. And right now we are using a triangle. So it moves that way. If of course we go to a saw, it's gonna start very abruptly and then go up. If you go the other way, we are ramping up and then starting over. Pretty simple. Now, if you go all the way up, it's just going to get much more aggressive. Right. So you can, of course, do the same thing with this one. If you go all the way up and we kind of see where we are cutting, maybe I'm going to go there. And we provide a little bit of modulation. We're going to get it. Right. And of course we can go faster. Now, of course, at the end of the day, you can do a little bit of a combination of the first and the second one, and this is gonna give you that MS20 kind of a vibe. Right? So really cool sound. And I'm adding a little bit of reverb just to make it a little bit easier to hear. Because if it's too dry, sometimes it kind of, the sound sucks. So I'm adding a little bit of reverb in post. Okay, so we know that on the first row, we can do pretty much the modulation for the frequency, the cutoff, and the high pass and the low pass with the modulation generator, right? With the LFO. And we do the same thing on the 3 controls. Now on this one, we are going to be using an envelope, but we don't use the same envelope. On this one, you're going to be using the frequency, and this one is kind of a pre-wired to use the envelope generator one, this one. And the other ones, the cutoff, it's using the envelope generator number 2. And this is the second function of the envelope generator 2. It controls how the sound goes out, and then it will control how much modulation we are going to be doing with an envelope to the cutoff of the high pass and the low pass. So first, we're going to be covering the envelope generator number 1, and we're going to be working with the frequency. Now make sure that everything is down. It's going to go up, and we get kind of a default sound. So the envelope generator 1, it works like the envelope generator 2, but it's just a little bit different. Notice that you're missing some values. So this envelope is an AR type of envelope. You get just an attack, and it works the same way we already discussed, and you get a release time, and again, it works the same way we discussed. What's going to happen when we release the keys, and what's going to happen, how slowly will this envelope go up, right? But then you have a delay time. So the delay time is something that you don't have right here, and this doesn't work like the hold time. They are completely different things. So the delay time is how much time this will wait before the envelope kicks in. Okay, I'm going to give you kind of I'm going to show you how this works. So right now, we know that this is the only one that can use the envelope generator. I'm going to be going up in the amount of modulation that we can do, and notice that we just don't get anything. And it's because we are just doing nothing right here. So this one will modulate the frequency. I'm going to be going to maybe a lower C, and I'm going to be providing a little bit of attack. And right now what's going to happen is going to be so what it's doing, it's kind of a sliding, let's say gliding from a lower key to whatever key we are playing. In this case, I'm doing a C. It's kind of a, slowly ramping up to that key. And of course, if we decide to do it with a short time, it's going to be faster. Now, if we do, if we put something right there like that, it's going to slowly go up. It will take a long time. Right. If I go down, maybe I'm going to leave it right there. Maybe right there. What's going to happen when I release the key? So if I release the key, of course, this one is going to kind of go back to where we started. Now, the thing is that if you don't have a release time, that you're cutting the sound. At the end of the day, this envelope controls how the sound comes out. So it doesn't matter that you have some release right here. You're not going to hear it. So you need to have some release right here in order to hear this. And notice it's going down. So I'm going to be playing a key right now. It's going to slowly go up to some pitch. It's going to slowly go up from pitch up to whatever key we are playing. And then when I release it, it will slowly go down. It's going up. It's sustaining because I'm sustaining a key, and I'm going to release it right now, and it will slowly go back. Right. So that's how it works. Now, of course, it's pretty simple. It works just like the envelope we have right here. Now, what's the delay time? So the delay time, it's something really cool. As soon as I play a key, the modulation will kick in, right? It will start, and we cannot kind of prevent this. I'm going to go to slower times right here. So as soon as I play, it will just start the modulation, right? Maybe what I want to do, I want to wait a little bit of time before the modulation starts. So this is going to be the delay time. So if I go up on the delay time, it's going to wait a little bit of time before it's going up and doing the modulation. Notice that we get it. I'm going to be make it a little bit more obvious. I'm going to be playing C. It's going to start and kind of be stuck right there on that point. And when this time is up, then it's going to go and do the modulation. Let me make it more obvious. It's stuck right there on that frequency. When the time is up, it's going to go up. And when I release the keys, it will slowly go down. So that's how this control works. And notice that you can, it says EG1, which is of course this one. And then it says Ext, and it's because we can patch something and convert this control to something else. We can just connect a different thing that is not the envelope generator and control the frequency with something else. So all of these controls, they work as attenuators, of course, but they are patchable. We can change the behavior of these ones. And we are going to talk about that on the next one. All right, so then you have this ones, and again, we are back to something more default. I'm going to go all the way down right here. We are still, we are not using it, but I'm going to go to what we have from before. Now, of course, this is going to change now because we need to talk about these two attenuators. So this one will modulate the high pass and the low pass cutoff. So how it will do it? Well, it will use this one. And this is how it works. This one controls the volume, but it also controls this modulation. So if we modify this, we are modifying how the sound goes out and how this modulation will behave. Right? So we are doing both at the same time. Now, at the end of the day, you can connect something right here to the patch bay. You can change how which envelope this will hear, and you can even use the envelope generator number 1, or maybe use an envelope from a different synthesizer. All right, so if I'm going to go to this one because this one is going to be like the most obvious, and I'm going to be doing a little bit of peak, right? So we can see if we do this. So the idea of modulating this, again, maybe you're starting, so I'm gonna kind of give you the explanation. The idea with this one is to use the envelope to modulate this control. If I play something, I want this to do this, and then go back every time I play a key. Right? I want to do that. That's the modulation we're gonna run. We're gonna go up and we're gonna down at some point. How we are gonna be going up, how we are going to be going down, well, that's going to be decided by the envelope generator 2. And we already talked about this when we talk about the VCA. So how slowly we go up? Well, this one, if I go right here, notice that right now it's doing nothing. It's because, of course, we have no instruction right here. So if I provide a little bit of a takt time, this is going to go up. Now, in this case, of this synthesizer, the sustain level, when we go all the way up and we are using it along to modulate this control, we need to go down to the sustain. And this is how this synth works. Notice that now we get something when we go down to the sustain. So when we go all the way up on the sustain, this is not reacting the same way it does on the other synthesizers. So if I go down to sustain, we are going to be able to hear what we are doing. So in this case, the attack time is deciding how fast we go up or how slow we go up. And how much we go up, well, it's going to be this control, this attenuator. If I go all the way up, notice it's going all the way up. And if I do less, it's going to do less. Right, pretty simple and understandable. How slowly we go up, we go down, well, that's, go back. It's going to be the decay time. We go slowly, and then we need to go back to, to the same place. Well, that's going to be the decay. And now we get that kind of a classic sound. And maybe we're going to make it a little bit shorter. Right, again, if we make it shorter. And of course, you're going to need to change the values to fit whatever it is that you're doing. I'm going to go do something like that. And now, of course, you're going to get a little bit more. Right? So we are getting that modulation every time we play a key. We go up and we go down. Now, of course, the sustain in this case works for the BCA and this one. But remember that when you go up, you're going to be losing a little bit of that modulation. So maybe just leaving all the way down the bottom if you're not sustaining keys. It's going to give you that sound that you're looking for. Now, the release time works here as well. And I'm going to do a little bit of a sustain. That is that we release the keys. And when I release, it's kind of a going back to the same position. Now, if I go no release, this is still not audible because when I play and I release the key, the sound goes down, dies right away. So we cannot really hear. And if you see the spectrum, we cannot see it go down. But if we have some release, you're going to be able to see it going back. Right, so pretty simple instruction. Let me go to the other one. I'm going to stay on this one. Right, so remember that you can do the same thing with the other one. If I do a little bit of modulation, and for now you can maybe stay right there and add a little bit of peak so we can see it. Then we're going to be doing modulation for both. We are modulating the cutoff of the high pass and the low pass with this envelope. And you get that classic MS20 sound. Okay, so I'm going to go back maybe to no release and go back to the default sound that we have from the beginning. And we are pretty much done with the guide. Now, at the end of the day, and let me go down to this one. So at the end of the day, this is a synth from the 70s. So now today's day, you can buy a synth and you have a million LFOs, a million envelopes, and you can do whatever you want. And well, this is not the case. It's very limited with what it can do, and what it will require from you is to do modulation with your hands. You're gonna need to kind of get right there and get dirty. And manually do all your modulations, because sometimes you're gonna need to, and this is kind of the vibe of using an analog synth sometimes, mostly with kind of a vintage gear. Right. So yeah, it's doing a little bit of manual modulation. It's something that you're gonna need to do. We cannot do this, with a different control, right? We just can do an envelope or we can do an LFO, but you're gonna need to do some manual modulation right here. All right, so we are done. We are done with pretty much the whole synth, minus the patch bay, of course. Now, you can still create amazing classic sounds without using the patch bay at all. Really good sounds, classic sounds. But then when you learn the patch bay, you kind of expand the possibilities of what you can do with the synth. So the next thing for me is going to be recording the patch bay, just the patch bay alone. And to do so, you need to understand how all of this works. Because if you don't understand all of this, you will not understand what we are changing right here on the patch bay. So first, kind of make sure that you are kind of used to this, using just this panel, and you know what it does, and you're very comfortable using it, and so on and so on. Because when we reach to the patch bay, things are going to get a little bit, kind of confusing, because the patch bay is confusing, this patch bay. Some other patch bays, like the Neutron one, it's not confusing. It's pretty simple. You get outs, you get ins, and everything is very easy to understand. Well, this is not going to be the case. But I'm going to go and kind of take you step by step on each in and each out. And at the end of the day, you're going to find that the patch bay, it's amazing and it's super simple to learn. So if you like this guide and you like what I do, remember to like and subscribe. And of course, remember to check Patreon, because maybe you want to, buy me some coffee. That would be nice. So at the bottom on the description, you get a link to Patreon. And if you sign up for maybe 1 month, you're going to be getting a lot of downloads, some downloads, like patches, maybe samples. I'm going to be adding some samples in a little while. So yeah, you get something in return. And also at the bottom, you have a link for PayPal. So you have a lot of ways to buy me a coffee. If you can and you can afford it, I will appreciate it. If you cannot afford it, that's fine. That's not the reason why I create these videos. Right, so I hope this was useful to you, and see you on the next one, which is going to be the patch bay.